Hello everyone. Today we will learn about client side, about how to actually make something that can be used by people just like us, by someone who doesn't need to code at all. The focus of this lesson is to simply make something usable and be proud of already the knowledge you've built from lesson 1. Basically, we will be able to make something and be proud of what we made. Specifically, remember the requirements, the problem laid in the first lesson? That is what we will be making. At least some of those requirements will be covered, and it will all be done in a shape of a desktop application. So let's get to it. But before we start new things and as we wait for people to join, let's briefly go through what we had in the last lesson. If you haven't already, please go and download the code of the last lesson, which you can find here. So download it as zip. Not this one. Make sure you are at lesson 4 branch and download the code if you want to follow through me. And open that solution, and you should see something that I see on my screen. Basically, the code which we wrote in the last lesson, except all the comments for studying. It's just the application that does what it should. What does it do, you might ask? Well, let's run it and see. So it warns us if something goes wrong, and on top of that, it reads this recipe txt, and it converts all of units like cups, teaspoons, and tablespoons into something that can be readable by a scientist, into SI system units. And it outputs it next to where it's built. So if I go, have too much stuff open, let's close everything. If I go here to the build folder, you can see there is recipe txt, and then there is, I don't know which one of those, this one, I guess, this one. So you can see it's all nicely converted. Let's run again. Oops. Always happens, always happens, always happens. That is also not needed anymore. I can remove that, but it doesn't matter. So the idea of this lesson is to take this application and with minimal or almost not at all any changes, just making a desktop application out of the code we have here. So let's get to it. When talking about front-end applications, when about something that a person will see, we should realize that client and logic are actually two different things, and you should not mix the two together. If possible, you should separate them into their own places, and having a strong separation definitely helps. And what do I mean by a strong separation? Basically, my business logic, my problem solution should not care about how I present it. My presentation will take business logic and present that. Ideally, I just take output and present it in a nice way. Maybe on a label, maybe on a text box, maybe somewhere else. So I cannot refer to front end from back end, but my front end will refer to back end. And let's simulate that. Let's create the structure that I am referring to. And this structure is called two-tier or client-server structure. So I will create a WinForms project. Sorry for being too fast. Right-click on Solution, select Add, New Project. We will not be using MVVM. We'll just be using a very simple approach. There is not much state for us, so we don't care. Then select Windows Forms app.NET. Make sure it's not .NET Framework. We are working with .NET 5. So .NET is what you want to choose. And then click Next. And the place is fine. How do we name our client project? Well, it's literally, so the naming of a project should be based on a solution name. And our solution name is Recipe App. And this is a client or a desktop client. So you could simply call it .client. If you have multiple kinds of clients, you could then call it .desktop. But we have only desktop clients, so calling it desktop doesn't really help. Therefore, .client is enough. Recipe app.client, and I hit create. And this creates a Forms application, WinForms application with this window. So what you see here is two things, two C# classes. Program class, already something that you are familiar with. All it does is bootstraps that window and just runs the application. That's the entry point of every application. The same goes for WinForms application as well. And it just builds a form and runs it. Very simple. And the form now, what is a form? A form is actually two things. It's a designer under the hood, which internally creates a bunch of fields and methods necessary for this form to work. And resources file. In the end, you will rarely ever go here. You will usually be in a different place. The beauty of WinForms is that you can basically drag and drop stuff. Like here, I have a toolbox and I can drag and drop different things. And it already, will do something. Anyways, before we proceed, a few questions. I don't have .NET. I have .NET Core and Framework. If you don't have .NET, use .NET Framework. There is no .NET Core WinForms, so just use .NET Framework WinForms. It's okay as well. There won't be much of a difference, if any. And another question is, what is STA thread? It's single thread application. It's basically a legacy thing that tells that this thing should be run on a single application. On a single thread. I don't know what are the implications of not doing it, but that's just the template that's generated. We don't need to put too much attention into that. All right, let's continue. We can, change the size of an initial form, and everything is cool. Naga asked, does scaling matter? It says mine is currently at 125%, and there is an option to restart with 100% scaling. It doesn't matter. We are not making anything pretty. WinForms is going to look ugly, awful, but it will work, and it will be something presentable at least. Let's get something done. So before, we had an input. Basically, we had a file. From that file, we take recipe and we output a converted recipe. So basically, what we want is somewhere where we can put input, somewhere where we can put output in some visual stuff, and then a button which takes input and produces output, right? So let's make that. If you don't see a toolbox window, click View and select Toolbox. Toolbox is a place that contains a whole bunch of controls. A control is a visual element in WinForms. All of those things are controls. For example, what I want to do is to have two rich text boxes. This is where my input will be, and this is where my output will be. And maybe I'll make them equal. You can copy paste them, is okay. So far, just drag and drop simple stuff. We can make them slightly bigger. Let's add a few buttons. A button to do the processing. A button to maybe load, a button to maybe load, I don't know why is it so small. A button to maybe load text from a file, like to load this input box with file contents. And that would be okay. Yeah, that would be okay. How do I change the name of this button? If I simply start typing, actually, it points me to the right place, and that place is Properties window of this button 1. So I'll call this button Load. It will load file contents into the input box on the left. And another one, I'll call it Convert. It will convert the input on the left, the recipe with cooking units. It will convert it into a recipe with SI units and produce the output on the right. Okay. So we have two buttons. Best practice is to, have your buttons named properly. Button 1, button 2 are bad names, and you should rename them. So I'll rename this to Load button, and this one will be renamed to Convert button. I'll do the same to these rich text boxes. I'll call this one Source, Rich Text Box, and I'll call this one Output or Result, Rich Text Box. Perfect. We have all elements here named properly. Also, the form itself could be renamed properly. Let's call it Recipe App 1.0. Let's just call it recipe app for now. It's a name of a variable, so I cannot put special characters. But if I go to appearance, I can change the text here, which is the one you see in the corner. And I'll change that to, let's see, recipe app 1.0. Perfect. To see if it all works and how it feels, you can hit Ctrl F5, but make sure another project is selected here. Not recipe app, but recipe app client. And hit Ctrl F5. And we can see something that has buttons where we can input stuff. So that's pretty cool. No buttons do anything because we simply haven't made that happen yet. It would be also nice to have, let's say, a label and call this source and call the other one output or result. And that will be pretty much all. So how can we click this button and upon clicking it, load load a file that we want to process? How to do that? Well, we need to double click it. And this piece of code is generated. So this code, whatever you put here, will be executed. For example, in console application, you would write console.writeLine to print something. In Windows Forms application, you can write messagebox.show to print something through Windows Forms API. So let's say hello world. Messagebox.show. I'll print that if you want to copy paste. All right. And therefore, if I run my code now and hit load, it says hello world. If I hit load again, it says hello world again. Perfect. We have made a button that basically reacts on a click. But that's not what we want. We want to be able to call something meaningful, perform the conversion. Before we proceed, we should realize that all the code we need is already done. This is the code we built in the last 3 lessons that does the conversion of a cooking recipe. So from a console application, we need to refactor this into a pure, nice class library, just pure code and no visualization. So again, I'll go right-click on the solution, select Add, New Project, and from here I'll type console, not console, class library, and I'll select .NET Standard because that's the kind of library, that's the kind of framework which both .NET framework and .NET Core are built upon. Basically, if you're choosing standard, it supports all frameworks as long as it's decently recent. And again, I'll call this after my solution. And here I'll call core. The suffix here will be core. Core saying that this is the core solution to the problem. It doesn't have any visualization. So recipe app.core. And I hit create. And I'm done. Now I'll move all code in here. And I'll delete this class 1. And my goal now is to remove everything that's related to console application. So this is not a program, this is actually recipe converter. I will not use this rename, I'll just double click and rename normally recipe converter. And I'll do the same with the file name. With the file name. Recipe converter, perfect. Just renaming it. Make sure it's public. If you don't make this public, it will not be accessible from outside of this project. And we want to use core project and the client project. So we have to make sure the classes we want to consume are indeed public. All right. So let's think again what we want to do, what we really want to do. We want to standardize a recipe. So we take a recipe and we output a standardized recipe. All right. Therefore, I don't need these 2 methods. These don't have to be public. This has to be public because we want to call this method from client, and the rest can be private. The rest don't have to have any access modifier. That'll be all. This one should be public as well. So perfect, we have that. Now, before we move on, please realize that the goal of this lesson is not for you to understand how to make WinForms. It's for you to understand just the concept of what a client is and what the difference between the two, is between backend, console application, and front end. So client is front end, and that's what we are making. It's okay if you are unable to make it today. It's just a concept that I'm trying to introduce. So it's okay if things aren't working out on your own time. You have a choice to do it or not. It's fine either way. We won't be coming back to WinForms after this lesson because it's just not something that we should put too much effort into. There are more practical things. But it's great because it's easy to learn and easy to familiarize yourself with what it means to create a client. Continue. So we have a recipe converter. We have an exception, 2 public classes in recipe app core. We need a way to move this code somehow, or rather make this code somehow accessible from this project. Now, if I type, recipe converter, nothing happens, nothing pops. What can I do? So I can right-click on dependencies and add project reference. And I will add core project reference. Just so I don't confuse myself, I will remove this because I don't need it anymore. And keep in mind that removing a project doesn't really physically delete it. So I'll delete my recipe app as well. And I can continue. So I have one project. So this project that refers to another project. my recipe app client consumes recipe app core, and I can see it either through project settings window or through the dependencies window. This basically means that I can call code from another project, from core project in my client project. And again, as mentioned, this means I can now call that logic for the buttons. I want to convert something that's here and output that here. So I'll double click on convert button and say, what is the input I want to convert? And that input is source, RichTextBox text. So I'm getting text of my RichTextBox source. Then I'm saying what? Then I'm saying that I take my recipe converter and I try to standardize this recipe. And this is the output I get back from the business logic, the core project. And now I need to go back to here and update the UI so that it takes that updated result. So output, or rather result, RichTextBox text is equal to this converted text. And this is a very fundamental flow of how you usually interact with client and backend. You read some input and you feed that to something that can process that input, and the output you get, you use that to update UI. It's a fundamental way of doing things with client and backend communication. Let's try it out. You know, we have this one. Yeah, probably not anymore. We have a branch in which we have that example recipe, so I'll open that branch. I'll paste the contents of this file in the chat so you don't have to be confused. Just in case, the link as well if you want to copy it from here. So I'll click raw, whatever, copy it. And so I have it copied. I'll run the application. Problems. Right, I forgot to delete this. Okay, run. I'll paste it in this rich text box, which formats this thing properly. And if I click convert button, what I expect is this one to be filled. So I hit convert, and this input was converted into recipe, just as I wanted. So it works. Like, the basic form of this application works. We managed to convert whatever we input into SI units. How to, instead of copying text and pasting, how do we read a file from WinForms application? How do we, instead of just typing where the file is, how can we browse to it in, the interface like this one? For example, if I click add existing, item, it opens this window. How do I open this window from Windows Forms? I know that Windows Forms can integrate, or rather has those native Windows features like file browser. How do I trigger that? Let's find out. So obviously I go back to this place and double click on a load button. And the key thing here is I will be using a class called OpenFileDialog. It's an idisposable thing, so I will need to wrap it in a using block. So I need to create an OpenFileDialog. And then I basically need to say, hey, if I confirm this dialog, like if I select a file and hit OK, then please be so kind read what the file, whatever content I have from that file. So we know already that we are doing the reading using stream reader. And basically the contents of a file is reading till the end. Sorry, this should go into its own method. Private, static, string, read contents from file browser. And I paste what I have cut in here. Great. And so basically, if I select a file, read its contents, else return an empty string. And here, I'll say output result RichTextBox text. Sorry, I'm not talking about result. I'm talking about source RichTextBox text is this. And if I run my application now and hit load, I don't really have a recipe, so let me take one. I'll go briefly, I'll go back to the code soon. Bear with me. Save as. Let's save it on desktop and then I'll paste it. Let's paste it somewhere here. And let's select this and let's run the application. So when I hit load, it now opened this file browse window, which is a native way of how you browse files in Windows. And then if I select this recipe.txt file, it loaded the contents. And if I hit convert, it converted those contents into SI units. So we have what we want. Now back to questions. Dialog something? Yeah. Dialog is an open file dialog. So this thing, if I call show dialog from that object, from that thing, it is the thing that, you know, shows this one right here. And if I call open file, it returns a stream. And if I want to read that stream properly, I will use a stream reader, which allows me to read that stream till the end. So to summarize, prepare for using for browsing files, browse files. If file was confirmed, read the contents of that file, basically is what this does. Happens if cancelled. Great. And to come back to this one is fundamental way of, doing conversion. I will not go for it. Yeah, we have what we want. We can load a recipe and we can convert it. If something cannot be converted, we just ignore it. Super easy to move it to port what we had in console to port that to WinForms. Now let's make this look nicer. If you can do nonsense like this, which is not the way to go, you don't really want that. It looks awful. So how do you solve a problem like this? How do you, make this not so BS? First, what you can do is you can set the size. You can set the size to fixed, and I don't remember how. Maximum size, minimum size. I don't remember how you do that. God damn it. I'll Google up because I generally don't remember. Fixed WinForms size. Windows style. Fixed dialog, start position. Min size, max size. Windows style, Windows style, Windows style, Windows style. Okay, thank you. Fixed. I still don't see it. Control box, main menu strip, maximize box, form border style, form border style. Nope. Icon, maximize box. Nope, 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 nope. Let me go back here. Fix form size in Windows Forms. Form border style to fix dialog, then the form is not sizable. Form border style to fix dialog. Form border style to fix dialog. Where is that? Form border style. Form border style. Sizable. Form border style. Form border style. Form border style. Here we go. Fixed dialog. if I run this, you can see I can, no longer there's an option to move this left and right. That's cool. But that's not what I want. I don't remember what was before. I think it was none, right? Let's try again. Oh, no, no, no. None looks awful. What is going on even? Wow, it looks awful. Yeah, that's definitely not the one I wanted. Which one was the default one? I forgot already. Sizable, right, sizable. Okay. Yeah, so it's sizable, it's bad. What do we do? Let's close. So in WinForms, there's a thing called anchor. If I open layout, there's an anchor. So I can basically select points to which this element pins. So by doing this, I basically say, if I scale this form to the right, to the left, these two guys will move to the left as well. If I scale it down, it will move down as well. If I scale it up, this one will not move up, but this one will move up, which makes sense because you don't want this to overstep this one, but you do want for this one to go up if needed. So let's do that for all of them. This one is the opposite side, so I don't need this one. Again, the same in here. What do we do with buttons? We basically want to say that if we are moving stuff left and right, we'll just scale this button left and right, but we won't make them move left and right. So let's do that. We won't move them up and down, I meant to say. So with this, if I run the application, you can now see that it scales properly, relatively well. Yeah, that's what happens with WinForms. You have to deal with it, I'm sorry to say that. It's okay, yeah. All right, so as you can see, it scales. So this is for us, let's say, acceptable. Let's add one more thing, which is, I don't remember again what I'm doing. Minimum size somewhere. Minimum size. This is the minimum size, let's say. Width and height. Width and height. Let's try again. Anchoring when placing elements. That's nice. Okay, so you can see I cannot make this ridiculously small, so that's good. And last thing that I will do is I will add 2 radio buttons. But before I add radio buttons, I will add a group box. And you might ask yourself, why do we need a group box? That group box will not have any name, any appearance. It's supposed to be transparent, more or less. It's a container object, and with those container objects, we can actually do interesting stuff. So we will add 2 radio buttons in this container object, in this group box. So this one will be called to SI units, or rather just SI units. And this one will be called cooking units. That's good. And if I run this application, you'll see something interesting. If I click one, the other one is unclicked. And this behavior is possible because I put them in a group box. If they're in a group box, that means that I can only have one of those active because it's a radio button. That's the behavior it has. All right. And by default, I'll say that this one is toggled. Checked is true. Done. And basically my convert now will say is SI units is convert to SI units, and I will determine that by checking whether that button is checked or not. But again, I need to name it properly because its name is not what I want. I want it to be named SI units radio button, and the other one I want it to be renamed to cooking units radio button. So SI units, cooking units, and with that I want this to be yeah, to take that radio button of SI units and check if it's checked. And if it's checked, convert to SI units. If it's not checked, convert it to something else. So instead of calling this standardized recipe, I'll rename this to convert to SI units. And rename. And I will basically say that this is a string which is equal to, which is equal to this thing, but only if is convert to SI units. Else, my converted will be something that I don't have yet, which is convert to cooking units. So I'll call this convert to cooking units. And I will need to create that method, convert to cooking units. So I'll do that now. So again, we take a recipe. Again, we split the words and similar stuff for every word we have. Again, we don't care, we set, well, we can print that out. We don't need this finally block anyways. Let's simplify this. I'll come back to it soon. Convert to cooking units, right. Let's do exactly what we did on the other one. So we take a recipe, we get words in that recipe, and instead of standardizing cooking units, we will need a method to do what? So not standardized cooking unit, but convert to cooking unit. And we'll pause here and go back to convert button click. Convert button click. I'll comment this out for now. Convert button click. If what happens here is if this is selected, if SI unit selected, it takes whatever is written here and it converts that to SI units based recipe. Else, if this is not selected, which is in this case, we take this input here and convert that to proper cooking units based output. So if this has milliliters and such, it will be converted to tablespoons, cups, and teaspoons, and so on. So with this button, we control which mode are we in, to what do we convert stuff. So I can prove that it works if I select recipe text and hit SI units and convert. It converts it here properly. If I select cooking units and hit convert, it shouldn't do anything, or rather it should simply paste this on the right side because I'm not doing anything right now. So convert, and you can see it just repeated itself on the right. So we need to now finish that and somehow make this work. What can we do? What can we do? So we need this method, convert to cooking unit, static void convert to cooking unit. And again, it takes the same stuff as here. And what can we do about it? Right. So if this word at that index, very similar. If word at that index cooking unit, right. Unit, words at index. So if this units at index, right. If this unit is equal to liters or milliliters, because that's what we're converting to, well, let's make it very simple. If it's Convert to cooking unit multiplier. I will delete this for now and change the approach and plan before I do anything. So convert to cooking unit is definitely something we need, but how we do it is going to be completely different. So let's come up with an algorithm first. What do we want to do? Is find how many milliliters is that unit. If -1, ignore. Okay, great. So we will check every word by word and see if it is a unit of milliliter or liter. And if it is, we get how many milliliters is that. When we have milliliters, convert milliliters, or rather find unit which is closest to milliliters, to the amount of milliliters. So we'll basically go through each of those and find the one that is closest, or rather we will take the difference from milliliters that we have and each of those. And as soon as we find something that's very close to these amounts, we'll say that's the unit we will be returning. So find unit which is closest to the amount of milliliters, and then based on its multiplier, calculate its amount. Perfect. That's our algorithm, which we'll try to implement. Let's get to it. Find how many milliliters is that unit. That's the first thing. So it's either milliliter or liter. Static double float get ml. Return -1, that's the default scenario. If it's -1, we don't do anything. So I'll move this comment in here, and instead I will say var ml is this. Then I say what I wrote in a comment. If ml is -1, we don't do anything and ignore. And I can delete the comment now. Then find which unit is closest to the amount of ml. So basically, we get the cooking unit, or rather its index. Get closest cooking unit, or rather the whole multiplier right away. So get cooking unit multiplier. Get closest cooking unit multiplier. No, not quite. Get closest cooking unit index is what I mean. So based on milliliters amount, we return index of a cooking unit that's closest to that amount of milliliters. For now, let's say 0, the first one. Cooking unit index is this one, ml. We have that. Based on its multiplier, calculate amount. Right? So amount is, so unit is this. Units at cooking unit index, var multiplier is multipliers at cooking unit index, and again var converted amount is milliliters times multiplier. And this time not times, but divided, because we are converting milliliters into something that's bigger. So we need to divide it. And this is the thing that now we need to replace. So words at index -1 is this converted amount to string, and words at index is the unit that we decided it to be. And that's all. So now I need to just implement these two methods. Get milliliters. How do I get those milliliters? What do I need to pass? I need to pass a word, a string. So I try to get yeah, get milliliters, get milliliters. I'll pass both things, actually. It's not nice, but for now I'll pass both things. Yeah, I'll pass both things. Okay, and I'll adjust this then. And basically it means if words at that index is L, return words, or rather like this, else return -1, that's fine. So if it's milliliter, return return words at index -1, and we parse this thing. We parse this thing to float. Good. And again, we said we try parse because things might not be as they seem. So we try parse out bar number, unit, milliliters actually. If not is number, we return -1. And if it is a number, we return milliliters. So we get milliliters. And we now need to implement get closest cooking unit index. So we take milliliters. Sorry, doubles is actually a better unit. So I'll change all those to doubles. Double, 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 double. Double. Good. Cooking unit index. finding the closest cooking unit is a matter of getting differences, the smallest difference. So basically, when finding the smallest number, we first need to take the number that's so big that the first number will be the smallest number anyways. So smallest difference needs to be something very big. So I'll say double dot max value. And we then continue running a loop for we go through multipliers. Length, of course, and difference is equal to, well, we take the multiplier at that, index. Multipliers at some index. We then calculate difference between that, between our milliliters and that multiplier. Also, we should be careful because we want not negative, like it shouldn't be negative difference. If it's negative, it's not what we, it's not good. Yeah, it's not good if it's negative. Okay, but we'll think about that soon. So the difference is milliliters minus multiplier. Not quite. The difference, we shouldn't take any difference if that unit is actually higher than what we have. So if multiplier is more than our unit, than our milliliters, we should simply skip it. That's not the unit we want. It's not very fitting. It's too much. It's overkill, Otherwise, we should take a difference. And if the difference we took is less than the smallest difference, well then, that's the index that we are looking for. Closest cooking unit index is 0, let's say, and this one will change it to whatever I am at. And in the end, I return that closest cooking unit index. It makes sense. So even if all units, for example, even if I have like 0.00001 milliliter, I can still convert that to tablespoons. Worst case scenario, because 0th index is the first one. Actually, the default one should be 2, because that's the smallest one. So I'll change that to 2. 2 is the smallest index. Sorry, smallest multiplier. Great stuff. Great stuff. I think it should work. Yeah, looks good. Probably it won't work, but we'll see. So let's load something here. Let's hit convert. It converted. Perfect. And let's now do the opposite. Let's take this output in here and let's convert it to cooking units. So what I expect is that these will be converted from milliliters into Cooking units. Drum rolls. Convert. Let's see. 3.5 teaspoons, 1 teaspoon salt, teaspoon, teaspoon. Everything is a teaspoon. We have a problem. 9 teaspoon butter. Yeah, everything is a teaspoon. That's a problem. We made a mistake somewhere. Let's go back to this part. Where did we make a mistake? There is 1 tablespoon. I don't get it. I'll debug. And if I hit convert, let's see. Difference 2.465. So we have this many milliliters. We have multiplier. Oh, right. I'm doing something really wrong. Okay. Okay. The second multiplier. The second multiplier is this. Oh, I forgot to update the smallest difference, right? So it's always the last one. Right. I should update the differences. And it should work. And if I hit convert now to cooking units, yay! It seems to be working. Tablespoon, teaspoon, cup. Right? It's working, right? Let's try again. SI units, convert. Why this one is no longer convertible? I guess because it's too big. So that's another little problem we need to solve. We did the string somewhere. Right here. My favorite way of doing it, though it's probably not the right way, but I like it. I'll remember the simple way of writing it, float fixed point number, and to just say the precision is 2 symbols. So now we avoid that issue and hit convert, no BS numbers. Let's try again and hit convert. No BS numbers. Let's try again and hit convert. Teaspoon, tablespoon, cup. Okay, it still works. SI units, convert. What interests me that converting it back to SI units doesn't work. And I wonder why. Okay, let's debug. Why is it ignoring converting it back to SI units? Let's see what happens. Load the file, the recipe, hit convert. Yeah, perfect, it's converting, great. Now select this and hit this in here and hit convert. Yeah, good, it works. But if I do it again, it doesn't, so that's weird. Now if I take this and paste it here and delete this, it still does exactly the same thing. It just tries to do the conversion to still the same cooking units. Or does it? Huh. Confusion. Let's hit it again. Oh, I see. It might indeed, and it actually says something, maybe somewhere. It probably says something somewhere. Let's fix it. It's a good idea. Yeah, thank you guys. So let's change that. Also here, why is this one working and the other one not? Okay. Converted amount, the string, format, F2, and number format, culture invariant, culture invariant. Okay. Oh, maybe it wasn't working with this one as well when you think about it. It's probably the same problem. I hate formatting as well, by the way. Yeah, because we never actually had to use what we converted, so it wasn't ever working with either end ever. Okay, let's try. Convert. Yeah, so now everything is dot. Select this, hit convert. Nothing happened. I mean, yeah, nothing happened. Okay, let's try again. Not debug mode, just normal mode. Load, recipe. It's all dots. So what's the difference between this and the other one? What's the difference? Fuck. I don't see it. I don't see it. Okay. Load recipe convert next cooking units. Select this, convert, go inside, go through, go through, go through. The difference, try parse. What's the index? 5, index at 5 ml, and one before is this 17.25 0. Let's use all the debugging nasty skills that we know. So we're trying to parse 17.25 and it's not working. That's a good point. I have it pasted, you know, so we can try it. Oh, but okay, let's load this, take this, close this, and let's start. Sorry, not in debug mode, normal mode, and paste and convert. It does work, but it's the exact same conversion. Like the principle, how we convert is done the same way. So why is it not getting milliliters? Or maybe we are parsing the cooking units differently? I don't know. I really don't know. Oh, we did. Look at that. We sure did. Here. This is how we actually parse the number. So it's probably a good idea to move this in a function. Parse double. I'm doing quick refactoring, so basically I just moved the bit of code that does this thing into a function. And now I can reuse this function. So instead of this one, I can simply use parse double. Parse double basically, you know, takes amount of text and it allows any decimal point, and it says culture invariant, basically what we want. So now it should work. It should work both ends. Okay, let's take recipe, let's hit convert, let's take this, let's paste here, let's select cooking units, and let's hit convert again. Perfect. So now it works both ways. Great. Do we mess anything up? I am not sure. I don't think we mess anything up. I think it works. So we have our cooking app. A functional app done in 2 lessons, basically. Like if I had to do this myself, like immediately, it would probably take me 2 hours, something like that, maybe 3. So nice. Something that you can be proud of. So basically this tool, like all the knowledge that you gathered up to this point, as you can see, already enables you to make stuff, to create something useful. This is already useful. For example, if you are a scientist who likes cooking, you could use this app to work with units that you know and be very accurate. Or if a scientist made a recipe and put those liters and milliliters, you could input what he or she wrote, and output it in cooking units, like as a normal human would read. So it's really cool because it is practical. It's useful. It's not a toy application. It's something that people could use. Before we proceed to Kahoot, do you have any questions? And if you do, please ask them now. I will push this code. Recipe app in WinForms 1.0. So the homework also for this lesson is really cool. You will have to take this code and you will have to finish the requirements. So it will be one of the first moments for most of you when you take existing code and work with it to build something that you actually need to build. A question. So the open file dialog does not count to the logic, or how should we separate between client and logic? Great question. What is open file dialog? Sorry. What is open file dialog? It is basically, this window. This window is visuals. It's UI. It's WinForms. It is client side, 100%. This part is still client side. This part is client side. Since I'm calling this from a dialog, this is client side. This is logic. It's not client side, but it's so little of it that it's probably okay, acceptable. It wouldn't make sense to split this to another place because it's so fitting here. So it's okay. You can sometimes make compromises for really bit of logic. And this is all the logic there is. All the logic there is for reading something. That's all the business logic here. The rest is just visuals. So this is okay. It's acceptable. This one, I would say this one is a more problem. Though this and this is just bindings. However, yeah, it's also kind of like bindings. Ideally, you would have maybe a convert button. So if you wanted to make this slightly better, actually quite much better, you could make these methods private and expose only one method. So we convert recipe and we pass that bool is SI unit. And I will then go to the client project, to the convert thingy, and move this out into the converter. So if SI unit, return this, else return this. And my input is a recipe. And I don't need to call this from a class because I'm in this context. And if I go back here, now it's slightly more simplified. I can basically say recipe converter, convert recipe, I take input, and I say to what do I want to convert it. Do you get what I just did now? Like, I just did a tiny refactoring, moving the logic out of front end and shifted that into back end because I could. It was very convenient, and it was definitely like a choice. Should it be there or should it be there? And since I don't lose anything by shifting it all the way to backend, I did that. Whenever there is a choice, whenever it's convenient to do so, you should do so. I hope this answers the question. It was a great question and a great example illustrating the point, I think. Now let's play Kahoot. Here is the game pin. Here is the Kahoot link. I'll wait 1 more minute roughly. Again, a reminder, you can play this on an app. You can play this on browser. But what's recommended is that yeah, I don't even know what to recommend. Well, just good luck. Let's go. You will need luck with WinForms. Just a test question so that I know everyone's ready. Reminder, 1 question is 1 minute time to answer. Gregory, it's still not a serious game. You have still a chance to join. Again, pin is here. So you're free to join still. All right. Pick the odd one out. Which one doesn't fit? I didn't talk about full stack, but it's basically doing everything. Everything, including backend and frontend, and maybe even rear end. And yes, camera. That's great. Oh shit. Wonderful. Yay. Okay. What is a message box? Remember when we tried the load button, we did something. We greeted ourselves somehow. How? I don't do it on purpose. I generally forget. And I said forget because not forgot because it happens all the time. It's a routine at this point. Happens. Why is the first one not right? And the answer is because there is a button, a confirmation button an OK button that you click with a message box. It comes with it. So it's not just text that cannot be edited. It is not kind of right, because this is basically a label, a definition of a label. A text which cannot be edited is called a label. This one is definitely more correct. I agree. This one is more correct. What is WinForms? So you cannot create applications on multiple platforms with WinForms yet. It's Windows only for now. Maybe in the future it will be for all platforms, but as of today, it's still only on native Windows. What is the control in WinForms? Xamarin Ma UI is not WinForms, but it's multi-platform, yes. What is the control? I think, yeah, I did mention it. Yeah, so to summarize, it's anything that you can place on a form. So anything that can be placed on a form is a control. Pick which of the following does not fit the form. Which of the following form is not? Not. That's right, it's not an input box. It's a control. It's something that gets rendered, basically, so it fits the definition. It is indeed a window, and it is indeed a class. Form is a class because it needs to be, it has code in it, you know. Anchor, remember that thing that snaps your control and allows you to do something? So when shouldn't you use an anchor? So this is an interesting one. If you have a fixed size window, you know, that means you will not be moving your form, scaling it left and right, so nothing will be moving. So what's the point of an anchor? You know? So it's actually surprising that most of you got this wrong. In the other two scenarios, you are moving something. So if you are moving something, you do want an anchor in place somehow. Dopefish number one. Well done. Which control can help with multiple radio buttons? Remember, what do we need to do to make radio button toggleable so that when we toggle one, the other one is untoggled? What helps? '15th out of 15. Yep, figured. It's GroupBox. It allows us to group multiple radio buttons or other controls that rely on each other. So what's the point of separating projects? Why do we need two projects? Remember, what's the idea behind separation of visuals, backend and frontend? Well done. When should you use TextBox? Sorry, it's a spelling mistake. TextBox over RichTextBox. In our recipe example, we were using RichTextBox. So maybe someone misread the question, and that's how I understand those four answers are here. But text box is, it's, you just want it for something short. It has a single line and it basically scales with the size of your font. Unlike RichTextBox, which allows you unlimited text, basically. So it is indeed when you have only one word or only one long line. Yeah. And final question, why do you need open file dialog? It's multiple choices, so be careful. Okay. So This one isn't right. I actually don't know how this one is evaluated. But these three are correct, and this one is not. AU, well done. Gregory, nice. First one. JM. Dopefish, fourth, and Zach, fifth. Don't give up. It's just WinForms. So 27% got the last answer, all three options right. Only 27%. All right, nice. So this concludes the first month material. And basically, WinForms just starts the practical side of programming. In the next month, in the lessons that follows, the next 4 lessons that follows will be about Web API. We will create ASP.NET Core Web APIs, and we will try to learn how to create our own RESTful Web APIs, web services, how to interact with them, how to secure them in a minimal way, how to get data out, how to write data, how to work with databases. We will try to learn things like that. I'm not sure if I'll make it, all in 1 month, but we will see. But that's the plan, basically, to go through those things. OP will be in the next chapter as well, and Git will be in the next chapter as well. I mean, with Web API. Also testing. So maybe it will be indeed 2 months because it's a lot of material. A lot of material. No, testing as in automated tests for the code you write. Basically testing if your code works or not. So that kind of testing. Yeah, basically. Test-driven code. All right, so there is a survey in the video description. Yes, unit tests. There's a survey in video description, and please fill it. Let me know what you think, what you liked and what you didn't like as much. So it helps me to prepare for the next lesson. Also, I'm not sure if next week there will be a lesson. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll try to spend some time to prepare and think. So it might be 1 week break. I'm not sure. Maybe it won't. I'll let you know sometime in the middle of a week if what my choice is. A reminder, on Wednesday there's an interview with Mark Fowler. Mark Seaman. So yeah, it's gonna be an interesting one as well. Looking forward to that. Anyways, that's all that I had for this lesson. If you have no more questions, I will conclude it. Hope you enjoyed the lesson. I think it was practical, useful, and I hope you learned something. I will commit this thing in. Moved a switch statement to backend, basically. Thank you all, and see you next time. Bye-bye.